The story begins 10 years in the past, on a dark, rainy night in England. Inside the massive, dimly lit hallways of the Helsing Manor, a young girl named Integra Helsing sprints frantically for her life. Her father, Sir Arthur Helsing, the head of the Helsing organization, has just passed away on his deathbed. Before his final breath, he informed Integra that she would become the new head of the family. He warned her that if she ever found herself in a desperate situation with enemies surrounding her, she must make her way down into the deepest sub-basement of the manor, where her salvation awaited. Shortly after his death, Integra's uncle, Richard Helsing, decides he wants control of the organization for himself. He gathers a group of armed loyalists and begins actively hunting the young girl through the estate. Integra navigates the vents until she reaches the underground dungeon. The area is pitch black, filled with cobwebs and dust. She drops down to the cold stone floor, but is quickly cornered by Richard and his men. Richard mocks her, claiming the Helsing legacy belongs to him. He raises his handgun and fires a single shot, hitting Integra directly in her left shoulder. Integra is thrown backward by the impact. She hits the ground, and her blood begins to spill across the stone floor. The corpse suddenly absorbs the blood and reanimates. The scene then cuts to the present day. A local priest in Cheddar Village has been turned into a vampire and has started transforming the villagers into mindless ghouls. A special police unit is dispatched, which includes a young female officer named Ceres Victoria. As they arrive, the streets are empty. Suddenly, the police unit is ambushed by the ghouls. Ceres manages to escape and runs deep into the surrounding dark woods. The ghouls relentlessly chase after her. Ceres trips in the dirt, gets back up, but the ghouls surround her. One of the ghouls shoots her in the leg, causing her to collapse. As the ghouls close in, Alucard appears in the moonlight, dressed in his signature red trench coat and wide-brimmed fedora. He calmly walks into the clearing. The ghouls open fire with their automatic weapons. The bullets riddle Alucard's body, tearing holes in his coat and dropping him to his knees. Alucard just starts laughing. His wounds instantly heal, and the bullet holes close up. He draws his massive silver handgun, the 454 Kasul. With incredible speed, he shoots the ghouls. His custom explosive bullets blow their heads and limbs clean off. The priest rushes forward and grabs Ceres from the ground. He holds her hostage, placing a gun against her head. Alucard smiles and asks Ceres if she is a virgin. She answers yes. Alucard raises his castle, aiming directly at Ceres's chest. He pulls the trigger. The massive bullet rips completely through Ceres's left lung, travels out her back, and strikes the priest directly in the heart, killing him instantly. Ceres falls to the ground, bleeding to death. Alucard walks over and offers her a choice to live as a vampire. She accepts. Alucard bites into her neck, drinking her blood and turning her. A few days later, Ceres wakes up in a sterile medical bed inside the Helsing Manor. Her chest is completely healed. Integra Helsing walks into the room, smoking a cigar, and informs Ceres that she is now a vampire working for the Helsing organization. Integra introduces her to Walter C. Dornez, the elderly family butler. Walter outfits Ceres with a custom yellow Helsing uniform and introduces her new weapon, a heavy 30mm anti-tank cannon named the Harkonnen. It is far too heavy for a normal human, but Ceres lifts it with ease. Integra receives reports of a massive spike in vampire incidents across the country that do not follow the standard biological rules of vampire creation. She suspects an unknown organization is artificially manufacturing these vampires. She deploys Alucard and Ceres to the town of Badrick in Northern Ireland to investigate an infested house. Ceres and Alucard arrive and start to hunt the hordes of ghouls in the area. As they finish dealing with the ghouls and start looking for the vampire controlling them, they run into a much bigger threat. Suddenly, Father Alexander Anderson, a paladin from the Vatican's secret section 13 Iscariot organization, steps into the room. Anderson immediately slaughters Ceres by stabbing her with his bayonets in the blink of an eye. As he prepares to strike the killing blow, Alucard engages with him and blocks the attack. Alucard and Anderson engage in a brutal close-quarters fight. Anderson throws dozens of bayonets, but Alucard shoots them out of the air with his Kasul. Alucard lands a clean shot on Anderson's head, blowing a chunk of his skull away. However, Anderson simply stands back up. His wound heals rapidly, revealing that he is a bioengineered regenerator. Anderson charges forward, taking multiple bullets to his chest, and drives a pair of bayonets directly into Alucard's chest. He then throws a volley of explosive blades, pinning Alucard to the back wall. With a swift swing, Anderson decapitates Alucard. Believing the threat is neutralized, Anderson turns back to Ceres. Just then, Integra arrives outside the house with her bodyguards. She orders Anderson to stand down, stating he has no jurisdiction in Protestant territory. Anderson laughs and prepares to attack Integra, killing her 2 bodyguards in the process. And then he doubles down on Integra, and just as he's about to kill her, Integra starts laughing, telling Anderson that merely decapitating Alucard isn't enough. Suddenly, behind Anderson, Alucard's headless body slowly rises to its feet. A dark, shadowy substance erupts from the neck stump, pulling the severed head from the floor and reattaching it. Alucard fully regenerates. Seeing that Alucard is unharmed by the decapitation, Anderson pulls out a set of glowing Bible pages, throws them into the air, and uses them to teleport away. Integra returns to London and attends a high-security roundtable meeting with the Convention of 12, a secret council of Britain's highest-ranking military and political leaders. She presents her findings, explaining that the recent vampires had tiny transmitter chips implanted into their brains, confirming they are manufactured. While the meeting takes place on the top floor of the Helsing Manor, the compound's perimeter is breached. 2 artificial vampire brothers, Luke and Jan Valentine, launch a direct assault. They arrive in an armored convoy with a massive army of ghouls, armed with full riot gear, bulletproof vests, riot shields, and military-grade automatic weapons. The conventional Helsing security forces try to set up defensive blockades in the courtyards, but the ghouls march forward, absorbing the gunfire. Jan Valentine, armed with 2 custom P-90 submachine guns, leads the frontline charge. He mows down the Helsing guards, and his ghouls tear the surviving soldiers to pieces. Upstairs, Integra orders Walter and Ceres to move out and exterminate the intruders. Walter and Ceres intercept Jan Valentine's forces on the grand staircase. The ghouls raise their riot shields and open fire. Walter walks down the stairs directly into the line of fire. He raises his hands, utilizing microscopic, razor-sharp wires hidden inside his gloves. With a swift flick of his wrists, the wires slice through the air, cleanly cutting the ghouls, their riot shields, and their guns into pieces. Ceres follows up, stepping out of cover and firing her massive Harkonnen cannon. The 30mm explosive shells obliterate the remaining ghouls in the hallway. Jan Valentine panics and retreats deeper into the manor. Meanwhile, Luke Valentine, dressed in a white suit, separates from the main group. He moves with incredible speed, descending into the sub-basement to find Alucard. Luke enters Alucard's chamber and opens fire. Alucard shoots back. Luke's artificial reflexes allow him to successfully dodge Alucard's bullets. He weaves side to side and manages to shoot Alucard directly in the forehead. Alucard's head snaps back and he falls to his knees. Alucard's wound heals in an instant. Delighted that Luke can dodge his bullets, Alucard crosses his arms and loudly declares the release of his restriction seals, shifting his power to level 1. The walls of the basement melt into shadows, and dozens of glowing red eyes open up in the darkness. Alucard's physical body dissolves into a chaotic, shifting mass of black shadows and red energy. A massive, spectral black hound with dozens of eyes emerges from the mass. Scared, Luke attempts to flee. Alucard raises his gun and fires, completely severing both of Luke's legs below the knees. Luke collapses to the floor. And then the spectral hound lunges forward and devours Luke alive. Back upstairs, Jan Valentine blasts open the heavy wooden doors to the conference room. He finds Integra Helsing and all 12 council members standing around the table, pointing handguns directly at the door. They all open fire simultaneously. Dozens of bullets riddle Jan's body, dropping him to the floor. Integra steps over the bleeding Jan, aims her gun at his head, and demands to know who sent him. Suddenly, the transmitter chip implanted in Jan's body activates. A bright blue flame erupts from inside him. As his flesh burns to ash, Jan looks at Integra and screams a single word: Millennium. With the conventional Helsing military force completely wiped out, Walter hires a highly skilled mercenary company known as the Wild Geese, led by Captain Pip Bernadotte, an eye-patch-wearing commander. Pip is briefed on the existence of vampires after Saras flicks him on the forehead, sending him crashing into a wall. The Wild Geese begin integrating into the Helsing defense structure, setting up checkpoints and learning to use specialized anti-vampire ammunition. Following the Valentine brothers' attack on the Helsing Manor, Integra Helsing uncovers the word millennium. She cross-references the term and discovers it is tied to a secret Nazi project from World War II. To follow a trail of Nazi fugitives, Integra deploys Alucard, Saras Victoria, and the newly hired mercenary Captain Pip Bernadotte to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The trio arrives in the city and secures a penthouse suite in an upscale luxury hotel to establish their base. However, Millennium is already aware of their arrival. Just as the trio settles in, Pip and Saras go to bed. But when they wake up, their world is turned upside down. Millennium had convinced the local authorities that Alucard and Saras were world-class terrorists, currently taking people hostage in the hotel. The authorities had taken action. Dozens of heavily armed SWAT officers arrived at the hotel in armored vehicles. They establish a perimeter, evacuate the civilians from the lower floors, and deploy snipers on neighboring rooftops. Pip Bernadotte, who was living in a cheap motel close by, watches the live news on the television, which shows their hotel completely surrounded. Pip assesses the tactical situation and panics. He realizes the men outside are not monsters or ghouls. They are normal human police officers. Saras is equally stressed, knowing they cannot fight back without slaughtering innocent humans who have been manipulated. Alucard sits calmly in the dark corner of the room, completely unbothered. Suddenly, the hotel room phone rings. It is Integra Helsing calling from London. Alucard frantically explains the situation, stating that the Brazilian police are preparing to breach. He goes on to ask Integra for her orders, telling her that he will kill all of them, but it will be Integra who has take responsibility of the killing. Enraged, she gives a direct, unyielding order: search and destroy. Hearing this order, Alucard's face stretches into a terrifying wide grin. He stands up, draws his weapons, and Saras to stay inside the room. Alucard steps out of the hotel room and walks slowly down the long hallway. The SWAT team has already breached the floor and is stacked in tactical formation. The commander spots Alucard and orders him to put his hands up and surrender. Alucard ignores the command and continues walking forward. The entire SWAT unit opens fire. Hundreds of bullets strike Alucard, shredding his suit, shattering his sunglasses, and tearing his flesh to pieces. Blood sprays across the walls as Alucard is pushed back by the sheer kinetic force of the gunfire. When the SWAT team empties their magazines and stops to reload, suddenly, Alucard starts laughing. His wounds instantly regenerate. Then Alucard goes on to brutally kill all of them. His explosive rounds obliterate the SWAT officers, blowing through their Kevlar vests and riot shields as if they were paper. When he runs out of bullets, Alucard lunges directly into the surviving group. He physically tears the officers apart with his bare hands. The hallway is completely painted in blood. Alucard then throws away the bodies onto the flagpoles outside the front door of the hotel and leaves them hoisted in the air on the poles. Blood drips down the side of the hotel for the remaining police forces, the news helicopters, and Tubalcain Alhambra to see. As Alucard walks down through the front, he spots Tubalcain on the street below. Tubal-Cain is one of the top Millennium agents and the one responsible for convincing the authorities. Tubal-Cain introduces himself and immediately launches an attack. He throws a rapid barrage of glowing playing cards. The cards slice through the air with explosive force. Alucard raises his guns and attempts to shoot them down, but the razor-sharp cards cleanly cut through Alucard's bullets in mid-air and slice deep into his arms and chest. Alucard steps back, realizing the cards are imbued with a special magic that negates his regenerative abilities. The deep gashes on his body refuse to heal, and he bleeds continuously. Tubal-Cain utilizes his incredible speed and agility to dance around the roof, keeping his distance while throwing wave after wave of razor cards. He creates physical illusions of himself using the cards, confusing Alucard and striking him from blind spots. Bleeding heavily from dozens of unhealing wounds, Alucard decides to end the battle. He drops his guns to the ground. He crosses his arms and declares the release of Restriction Seal Level 1. The atmosphere on the roof immediately distorts. The sky turns dark, and a massive, shifting mass of black shadows and red energy erupts from Alucard's body. Dozens of glowing red eyes open within the shadows, enveloping the rooftop in a chaotic darkness. Tubal-Cain loses his confident smile. Realizing he is facing a true monster, Tubal-Cain attempts to secure a quick victory. He charges forward and throws a final, decapitating card aimed straight at Alucard's neck. Alucard does not dodge, because what gets cut is barely his shadow. Tubal-Cain freezes in absolute shock. Then Alucard kicks Tubal-Cain's knee joint, completely dislocating it. Tubal-Cain screams in agony and collapses to the roof. Alucard walks over, his red eyes glowing, and picks up the defeated Millennium agent and sinks his fangs deep into Tubal-Cain's neck. By drinking his blood, Alucard aggressively absorbs Tubal-Cain's memories and knowledge. Through the blood, Alucard uncovers the truth. Millennium did not burn at the end of World War II. They have spent the last 50 years secretly building a massive, heavily armed battalion of 1,000 artificial SS vampires, known as the Letzte Bataillon in South America. As Alucard drains the last drops of blood, a small communication device on Tubal-Cain's lapel activates. A voice speaks through the radio. It is the Supreme Commander of Millennium, the Major, watching the aftermath through a camera feed, enthusiastically greets Alucard. He formally declares that the 50-year truce is over and officially announces a war of annihilation against the Hellsing organization and England. Alucard finishes drinking Tubal-Cain's blood, grabs the remaining intel, and boards the helicopter, successfully escaping the city. Shortly after their return, Integra attends a classified briefing with Queen Elizabeth II and the military leadership. During the meeting, a young boy with cat ears dressed in a Hitler Youth uniform appears out of thin air. He introduces himself as Warrant Officer Schrödinger. He pulls out a two-way communication device. The device then broadcasts a live video feed. The Supreme Commander of Millennium, known as the Major, appears on the screen. He formally addresses Integra and the Queen, delivering an impassioned speech detailing his obsession with war and officially declaring his intent to destroy England. Simultaneously, Millennium Operative First Lieutenant Rip Van Winkle executes the first phase of the invasion. She leads a small infiltration team to board and hijack the British VTOL aircraft carrier, the HMS Eagle, stationed in the Atlantic Ocean. The vampires slaughter the human crew. Rip paints a massive swastika on the flight deck in blood. The British military dispatches a squad of SAS helicopters to reclaim the ship. Rip sits on the deck with a parasol and aims a long-barreled flintlock musket. She fires a single shot. The magic bullet changes trajectory in midair multiple times, piercing the cockpits and rotors of every single helicopter in a single continuous flight path, destroying them instantly. Integra forces Sir Penwood to procure a retired SR-71 Blackbird reconnaissance jet. The aircraft is heavily modified for Alucard. Alucard launches the Blackbird, flying it straight up into the upper atmosphere to bypass Rip Van Winkle's firing arc. He puts the massive jet into a sheer vertical nosedive directly toward the HMS Eagle. Rip fires her magic bullet. The bullet strikes the SR-71 over and over, shattering the glass and tearing the fuselage to shreds. Alucard uses his shadows to physically hold the crumbling jet together and crashes it directly into the flight deck at supersonic speed. Alucard steps out of the burning wreckage unharmed. Rip's infantry opens fire with RPGs and machine guns. Alucard releases his restriction seals. He summons his familiars. They slaughter the infantry in seconds. Rip fires her musket one last time. The bullet passes through Alucard's chest repeatedly, but he ignores the damage. He catches the magic bullet squarely in his bare teeth, shattering it. He punches his hand completely through Rip's chest, lifts her off the deck, bites into her neck, and drinks her blood. With Alucard stranded in the ocean, the Major launches his primary assault on London. A massive fleet of heavily armored Zeppelins, concealed by an artificial fog bank, approaches the city. They launch hundreds of modified V-1 rockets, striking key military installations and civilian infrastructure simultaneously. From the Zeppelins, the Letzte Bataillon, the Last Battalion, an army of 1,000 SS artificial vampires drops directly into the burning streets. They begin a systematic massacre, breaking into buildings, slaughtering civilians, and eating their flesh to rapidly turn the dead into an army of mindless ghouls. Integra and Walter are in a vehicle attempting to return to the Helsing Manor. Their car is ambushed by Millennium snipers on the surrounding rooftops. Walter steps out of the car, extending his microfilament wires. He clears all the insignificant ghoul hordes without any trouble. But then, the captain, a silent, imposing Millennium officer and natural werewolf, approaches. Walter tells Integra to drive away while he engages the captain alone. Integra drives through the burning city but crashes her car into a roadblock of ghouls. She exits the vehicle, armed with a sword and a handgun. She runs through the alleyways, decapitating ghouls, but is eventually cornered by a large squad of SS vampires. Before they attack, a barrage of blessed bayonets falls from the sky, pinning the vampires to the ground. Alexander Anderson drops into the alley, followed by a heavily armed squad of Iscariot priests. Anderson slaughters the remaining vampires. A temporary truce is established, and Anderson's priests escort Integra. Simultaneously, Archbishop Enrico Maxwell oversees the Vatican's response from a massive glass helicopter. He leads the Ninth Crusade, a heavily armed fleet of Vatican helicopter gunships carrying an army of thousands of Catholic paladins. They fly directly toward London with orders to wipe out the Millennium vampires and entirely eradicate the surviving Protestant citizens. Chapter 6: The Siege of Helsing Manor. At the Helsing Manor, Millennium forces led by First Lieutenant Zoran Blitz launch a ground siege. Pip Bernadotte and the Wild Geese have established extensive defensive perimeters, laying down claymore mines and barbed wire. As Zoran's vampire infantry charges across the manor grounds, Pip manually detonates the explosives, blowing the first wave of vampires to pieces. Zoran Blitz steps to the front. Half of her body is covered in shifting geometric tattoos, and she carries a massive scythe. Zoran activates her illusion magic. The tattoos spread from her body to the ground, and a giant projection of her face appears in the sky. She projects vivid, traumatic hallucinations directly into the minds of the Wild Geese. The mercenaries freeze in place. Sarah's, utilizing her vampire senses, realizes the attack is psychological. She fires a shot from her Harkonnen directly at the ground near Zoran, breaking her concentration and instantly dispelling the hallucination. However, the delay allows Zoran's remaining forces to safely cross the minefield and breach the manor walls. The battle shifts to brutal close-quarters combat in the corridors. The mercenaries are physically outmatched by the vampires' sheer strength and speed and are slaughtered room by room. Pip orders his surviving men to fall back to the inner safe room. Zoran's troops blow through the barricades. Sarah's engages the vampires in hand-to-hand combat to protect the men, but Zoran intervenes. Zoran uses her magic to trap Sarah's in a deep psychological illusion, forcing her to repeatedly relive the night her parents were murdered. While Sarah stands paralyzed and screaming in mental agony, Zoran physically attacks her. Zoran swings her scythe, cleanly severing Sarah's left arm just below the shoulder. She then slashes the blade across Sarah's face, blinding both of her eyes. Sarah collapses to the floor in a pool of blood. Pip rushes into the room, while his men fire assault rifles at Zoran. He grabs the bleeding Sarah and tries to carry her to safety. Zoran throws her massive scythe. The blade impales Pip entirely through his back and chest. He falls to the floor, crawls to Sarah, tells her she must drink his blood to survive, kisses her, and dies. Sarah bites deeply into Pip's neck, consuming his blood entirely. The act fully awakens her true vampire nature. Her wounds heal instantly. The stump of her severed left arm erupts into a solid mass of shifting, shadowy dark matter that forms a new limb. Her eyes open, completely solid red. Zoran's troops open fire, but Sarah effortlessly deflects the machine gun bullets with her shadow arm. With blinding speed, she dashes across the room, physically tearing the vampires apart and decapitating them in a single motion. Zoran attempts to trap Sarah in another illusion, but the magic completely fails because Sarah now houses Pip's consciousness. Sarah catches Zoran's massive scythe with her bare hand, shattering the blade. She grabs Zoran by the head, leaps into the air, runs horizontally along the stone wall, and grinds Zoran's face against the bricks at extreme speed until her skull is completely erased. Sarah retrieves Pip's lighter, leaps from the manor grounds, and heads toward the center of London. Chapter 7. The Sea of Blood and the Nail of Helena. In the center of London, Enrico Maxwell's Vatican helicopters hover over the burning streets. The Ninth Crusade begins its purge. Heavily armed priests slaughtering millennium vampires and defenseless human civilians alike. Integra and Anderson watch the massacre from the ground. Sarah, flying across the city utilizing her shadow matter arm, lands directly in front of Integra to protect her from the crossfire. As the battle intensifies, a thick fog rolls up the River Thames. The stolen aircraft carrier, the HMS Eagle, slowly glides into the city center, propelled entirely by Alucard's shadow manipulation. Alucard stands on the deck. Integra issues her final order over the communication channel. She commands Alucard to release Restriction Seal Level 0. Alucard complies. His physical body breaks apart, and a massive tidal wave of thick, dark blood pours from the ship, flooding the streets of London. This is Alucard's true form, the physical manifestation of millions of souls he has consumed over centuries. The blood physically consumes the Vatican forces and Millennium soldiers on the ground. From the blood sea, millions of corpses rise as an unstoppable army. Among them are Tubal-Cain Alhambra and Rip Van Winkle. Tubal-Cain's cards and Rip's magic musket completely destroy the Vatican helicopter fleet. Enrico Maxwell's glass helicopter crashes into the streets. He survives the crash, but is surrounded by Alucard's army of the dead. Alexander Anderson approaches the crash site, throws a bayonet, and shatters the protective glass. Alucard's familiars pull Maxwell out and tear him to pieces. Alucard steps onto the street in the physical form of Vlad the Impaler, wearing medieval armor. He welcomes Anderson to the slaughter. Recognizing that he cannot defeat millions of familiars, Anderson pulls out an ancient relic, the Nail of Helena. He drives the physical nail directly into his own heart. Anderson transforms into a monster of God. His body is overtaken by glowing, thorny vines that ignite everything they touch. He cuts a path straight through Alucard's army, burning the familiars to ash. He reaches Alucard and thrusts his bayonet into Alucard's head, trapping him in burning thorns. Sarah intervenes, grabbing Anderson's blade with her bare hands, buying Alucard enough time to break free. Alucard lunges forward, plunges his hand directly into Anderson's chest, physically crushes his heart, and pulls the nail out. The vines wither. Anderson crumbles to dust. Before the dust can settle, Walter C. Dornez descends onto the battlefield. However, he is decades younger. He crushes Anderson's remains beneath his heel. Walter reveals that he voluntarily defected to Millennium and allowed them to artificially convert him into a vampire to regain his youth, obsessed with proving he can kill Alucard in single combat. Integra commands Ceres to fly them up to the Major's command zeppelin, leaving Alucard to deal with Walter. Walter attacks, his microwires cutting through Alucard's armor and completely severing his arms and legs. Alucard regenerates, utilizing the corpse of Luke Valentine as a decoy to absorb Walter's attacks. Walter realizes his new artificial body is highly unstable, he is rapidly aging, and his flesh is beginning to tear under the stress of his own movements. Up in the Zeppelin, Integra and Ceres breach the hull and push toward the Major's command deck. Their path is blocked by the captain. Integra continues to the command deck alone, while Ceres engages the silent werewolf. The captain transforms into an 8-foot-tall bipedal wolf. He completely outmatches Ceres in physical speed and strength, kicking her through metal bulkheads and regenerating instantly from her Harkonnen fire. The captain pins Ceres to the floor. Within Ceres's mind, the soul of Pip Bernadotte guides her. A memory reveals that Pip had previously handed Ceres a silver tooth. Ceres physically manifests Pip's soul as a shadow construct. Pip's shadow grabs the silver tooth and drives it directly into the captain's chest. The silver instantly stops the werewolf's regeneration. The captain falls back and dies. Integra blasts open the heavy doors to the bridge, pointing her gun directly at the Major. The Major sits calmly inside an armored glass sphere. Down on the streets, Alucard has completely drained London of blood. He begins actively absorbing all the spilled blood across the entire city back into his own body to replenish his familiar army. Then the warrant officer Schrödinger makes his appearance on a building's roof. Schrödinger possesses a quantum ability. He is omnipresent, existing everywhere and nowhere, as long as he is physically aware of his own existence. Schrödinger draws a knife, decapitates himself, and falls completely off the Zeppelin directly into the sea of blood Alucard is absorbing. The Major explains his master plan to Integra. By absorbing Schrödinger's blood, Alucard consumes millions of souls, along with Schrödinger's quantum state. Unable to recognize his own singular identity among the millions of conflicting souls, Alucard's physical form begins to heavily distort. Alucard realizes what is happening, but it is too late. His body dissolves completely, fading out of existence as he is erased from reality. Down in the streets, Walter collapses. His body has rapidly aged past its limit. He executes Millennium's lead scientist as a final act of spite, sits against a piece of debris, and burns to ash. Aboard the Zeppelin, Integra orders Ceres to shoot through the glass sphere containing the Major. When Ceres fires off her cannon, the glass shatters, and bullets tear into the Major's face and torso, revealing metallic plating and wires. The Major is entirely a cyborg. As the Zeppelin begins to crash and explode due to Ceres destroying the engines, the Major aims a hidden pistol and shoots Integra directly in her left eye. Integra fires back, placing a bullet directly into the Major's mechanical brain. The Major dies with a smile on his face. Ceres grabs the bleeding Integra and flies them out of the burning Zeppelin just as it crashes into London. 30 years later, London has been entirely rebuilt. Integra Helsing is now an elderly woman, wearing an eye patch over her left eye. Ceres Victoria stands by her side, her physical appearance completely unchanged due to her vampire immortality. One night, Integra is sleeping in her bedroom. A vampire comes close to her neck, and just as he's about to bite her neck, she awakens and starts shooting at the unknown vampire. Hearing the sound of a gunshot, Ceres rushed into the bedroom to find Alucard next to Integra. Alucard explains his 30-year absence. After being erased from existence, he spent the last 3 decades systematically killing every single one of the millions of souls inside his own body. Because he is now completely aware of his single, isolated identity, he is able to physically manifest in reality once again, now possessing Schrödinger's omnipresence. Integra asks Alucard if he has finally returned. Alucard confirms his presence, leans forward, and bites Integra's finger, drinking a single drop of her blood. The Helsing organization's ultimate weapon is back, solidifying their eternal pact, and the story concludes.